As Bob said, I've been in the IT business for, and I'm sorry, I wander around a lot. If I get out of your field of view, just direct me back up here. I've been in the IT business for, well, before IT was a word. Been work from home for, well, before work from home was a thing. I worked for DXC Technologies. If you know Ross Perot or the name, he was the one that started that company, and it's changed hands several times. We are now called, no, it was EDS. Now we're called DXC. But anyway, so this is very passionate for me, both as working with youth and families for so long, working in the IT industry for so long. I see a lot. I see it all. Some of our stuff that we're going to talk about today is going to be explicit. It's not going to be crude or rude. It's not anti-family conversation. We're going to talk through a lot of statistics, a lot of medical studies. You're free to take pictures of that. I will leave my PowerPoint here. I'm assuming it's printable. You are welcome to take the information. It's all footnoted inside the presentation, so you're welcome to all of it. So there's a lot of things, and we've covered them, and I want to thank Brother Jones for laying such a great foundation last night for what we're going to talk about today, well, for the rest of the weekend, actually. Interesting stuff. So, contemporary attacks against marriage in the home. First, let's define marriage. And that sounds like a stupid thing to say. It really is. But what is marriage? We go back to the garden as Brother Jones did last night, and Brother Klein did as well. Adam takes a nap, and he wakes up, and the most beautiful woman in the world is there beside him, naked as a jaybird. What went through Adam's head? And that's an open question, and just keep that to yourself. But think about the dynamics that's going on in Adam's head as this is occurring. I would assume that since the surgery was performed on him, and I can't prove this with Scripture, that Eve was already awake when he woke up from his nap, missing parts. And here's the key to all of this. We go back to chapter 2, I believe it's verse 18. God looks down and says, he needs a mate. Adam never says, I need a mate. Adam's fully equipped as a human man. He has all the testosterone as a young man does, the same urges, the same problems that we dealt with. And he's involved in animal husbandry. He knows what's going on, but he never says to God, where's mine? God says he needs a mate. God gives him a mate. And I can't remember the exact wording Brother Klein used last night. We don't know that it was a formal marriage, but I think we can say it was a formal marriage. Now, here's a question, and we may talk about this a little bit later downstairs. Did God give Adam a golfing buddy? How about a fishing buddy? Think about that for a little bit. Gentlemen, we will talk about that later on. We're going to beat up on you today, and we're going to beat up on you in here a little bit too. So, just fun. But anyway, marriage. We jump into the relationship between a man and a woman. When we start talking about attacks on the marriage and the home, we're talking about the attack on what God has established as marriage, right? The home, we go on through the Genesis, we see the development of the family unit, and we see this throughout the Old Testament as we go through the patriarchs and through the prophets and the judges and the kings, we see the family unit being defined and solidified as God would have it to be. And we bring that forth to what we just studied out of 1 Corinthians chapter 7, also Matthew chapter 19, what God intended for there to be. And Brother Jones pointed this out last night, and I'm going to harp on it quite a bit today. God, spouse, children, right? That's the order that God set up. Now, what is attacking those things today? And we're going to look at a bunch of stuff up here, and I'm going to see if I can stay up with this. About 1990, and I know some of you are with me on remembering that. Some of you probably weren't born yet. David? 86. Okay, so let's start with David was born. About the mid-1980s, a little thing came across that we started using on college campuses called the internet. And it was restricted pretty much to college campuses because we just thought it was a cool little tool that we could use to share research studies and information and do conversations. And it was really super slow. But it was immediate by our standards. We didn't have to make long-distance phone calls. That was a thing. You had to pay for them back then, for those of you that don't remember. We didn't have to pay for long-distance phone calls to get a group together. There was no such thing as a conference call unless you had a corporate phone line, which no private college campus had at that time. So it was just a neat little tool that we used inside. About 1990, it hits the masses in this little thing called dial-up. You got mail. Remember that? Like any other new invention or new discovery or new tech, you mind if I set this on the floor? Because I'm going to do a Dick Van Dyke right over it. The new technology, we're not quick to adopt new technologies, right? Cell phones came out about the same time. How many of you got a cell phone and left it in your truck? Yeah, right? My wife would say, why do you have a cell phone? It's because you wanted me to have a cell phone. Why don't you carry it? Because it's in the truck. That was a conversation. We'll talk about that, about husbands loving your wives later on. Guess who adopted the internet first? The first major industry to adopt the internet was pornography. By 1998, the porn industry had topped $1 billion in internet sales. Today, in 2024, it is so diverse and so spread out, there is no reliable source that can tell us how much the internet porn industry is worth. Estimates range anywhere between $50 billion to $100 billion annually. Early adopters. The world will find a way to corrupt anything we put out there.
Amen.
Right? So in 2020, and this stat is 4 years old, comes from Family Research Council. The average age, male and female, of first exposure to hardcore porn is 8 years old. That means for every 12-year-old that's seeing it for the first time, there's a 4-year-old seeing it for the first time. Let that sink in for just a minute. Everybody here has the internet, right? Of some kind. All y'all know what a Google is. We have an 80-year-old man in our congregation. I asked him the other day a question. He said, Google it. He can't even work a smartphone. He comes to me about every other Sunday. What's wrong? Anyway, you get my point. You've typed into something innocuous and obscure and pure into Google, and something has come up that you don't want to see, you don't need to see, and you sure don't want to share it with anybody, right? This has all happened to us. or it's happened to all of us. 8 years old, average age of first exposure. And make no mistake, this is not isolated to the world. Your children may not have a phone. Your grandchildren may not have a phone, but their friends do. I promise you, their friends do. In 2022, and don't chalk this up to COVID, it had nothing to do with COVID. For the first time in history, for over 100 years, number one reason for divorce in America had been money. 2022, porn addiction and porn-related extramarital affairs became the number one, and it will not back down. Today, 63% of divorces are related to porn or porn-related affairs. Have we moved quickly? 1990 to 2024, this is where we are, 34 years. The length of time that Julie and I have been married. And by the way, I forgot to mention this, on behalf of Julie and I, thank you for inviting us up. It's been an extremely relaxing week. I know you just invited Julie and I got to come along for the ride, and I'm good with that because she's the one that everybody loves. And no problem with that. So this is where we are. 35 years ago, it was nothing. Now, some more statistics for you, and feel free to take a picture of this. Every second, keep this in mind today, every second, this is what happens. 28,258 users are watching pornography on the internet. At any given second of the day around the clock, 28,000. Now, you do the math on that for an hour. Do that for 24 hours. What do you come up with? A lot. Astronomical. These are U.S. statistics, by the way. These are not worldwide statistics. We'll get to worldwide here in just a few minutes if I have time. About $3,000 being spent on pornography on the internet. That's for pay sites. There are a bazillion free sites you can go to. 372 people are typing the word adult into a search engine. Now, how many people search Google for adult? They're looking for adult entertainment. Every day, 37 new pornographic videos are created in the United States. Those are professionally produced. That's not counting all the amateur videos that are being produced and uploaded. You see people all the time getting kicked off of TikTok, Facebook, whatnot for putting up illicit stuff, YouTube. This is professionally built. 2.5, get a hold of this. I can't conceive a billion. I know we have billionaires out there. I do not. That's not a number that registers in my head very well, unless we're talking about miles and distances between planets. But anyway, emails containing porn are sent or received every day, 2.5 billion. What's the population of the United States? 300 million, 350 million-ish. So that means that every woman and child, man, woman, and child, is getting about 7 emails, getting or receiving 7 emails a day with porn information per capita. 68 million search queries related to pornography. 25% of the total searches that are generated through Google. 25%. Now, all of us will go home sometime within the next few hours or days, and we will Google something. We want to know. We've been traveling your beautiful countryside here for the week, and every time we saw something we didn't understand, Google it up. Like blessing of the pets. We didn't get that. So we Googled that up. You know, that's what we do. If we don't know something, we Google it, right? 25% of all Google searches are for porn. 25%. Huge number. Here's the scary thing. Every day, 116,000 queries related to child pornography. And then a little bit of free information here. What time do I go to? 10:30? 11? No. 10. Oh my word, we're going to have to get moving here. But a little bit of free information here. So our children are being allowed to post TikTok videos, right? Or YouTube videos, whatever they want to do. Funny thing is, you can scrub that video off the internet. It takes about a minute. You can capture their voice. You can run an AI stream through their voice. And you can call their grandparents and say, hey, I'm holding them for ransom. Here's your daughter in her voice, or your granddaughter. Take me about 12 minutes to do it, the whole thing. Be careful what your children and grandchildren are putting out there. About 200,000 Americans are classified as porn addicts. How did they get there? 40 million American people regularly visit porn sites. 10% of our population regularly visit. That's a huge number. 35% of all internet downloads are related to pornography. Now, keep in mind, okay, I work in the corporate world as an IT guy. We download stuff all day long. Any given day, I'll probably download 60, 70 files or push them up one direction or the other. So this is taking into account all of the corporate world data transfers, whether it's data tables, files, whatever it is. 35% of all downloads are porn. You know, y'all don't live very far from major metropolitan areas. You look in all those big tall buildings, everybody in there is uploading and downloading data all day long. So you add that into the equation, and still over a third of all downloads are illicit. 34% of internet users have experienced, and we talked about this a minute ago, unwanted exposure to pornographic content through ads, pop-up ads, or misdirected links or emails. We get that. According to the National Coalition for the Protection of Children and Families, 2010, 47% of families in the United States report that pornography is a problem in their home. I was talking to a gentleman at PTP, and he was called to a family's home because the mother thought the child had a porn problem, and she wanted him to talk to the son. And he really didn't want to do it. He thought that was a conversation for mom and dad to have. So anyway, through the course of the conversation, she talked him into it. He went over there. Child was sitting at the kitchen table. And he walked in, and the son said, or he asked the child, said, do you know why I'm here? He said, yeah, I think so. And so they started looking through their internet history. And even though it's deleted, we can get to it. And the times that they were on porn sites, the boy had an alibi. He wasn't even home. Guess who it was? It wasn't the son, it was the husband. So now we went from a child counseling to a marriage counseling session. It's a big deal. We have a couple shops on our property. You can ask Billy about this. And people just wander into my shop when I'm down there in the evenings working. Because if you stare at a computer screen for 12 or 14 hours a day, you've got to go do something else. But anyway, the number one conversation I have in those shops with men of the church, porn issues. Number one, by far, in a way. And this started way before I was an elder. We got a problem. I got a problem. I don't know what to do with it. Well, the first thing to do with it is unplug it. Got a smartphone? Throw it away. Flip phones are still, and that's a whole other lesson for a whole other time. But anyway, number one conversation I have with men in the church is around porn. And do not mistake what I'm saying here. It's not a man problem. 1 in 4 men have a porn issue. 1 in 7 ladies have a porn issue. This is not a male problem. So anyway, pornography use increases the marital infidelity rate by more than 300%. Why is that? Well, I watch porn. I want my wife to be a porn star. My wife don't want to be a porn star. We're going away. 40% of people identified as sex addicts lose their spouses. 58% suffer considerable financial losses. About 33% lose their jobs. Now, I'm going to save that one for later. 68% of divorce cases now involve one party meeting a new paramour over the internet, while 56% involve one party having an obsessive interest in pornographic websites. For this you know, Paul writes to the church of Ephesus, that no fornicator or unclean person or covetous man who is an adulterer has any inheritance in the kingdom of God. Now, what does all that mean? Sexual immorality is nothing new. Remember who Paul is talking to in the church of Ephesus. What was their main religious problem in Ephesus? Little old lady named Diana. You remember her? A temple paid for and encouraged religious, I hate to use that term, religiously founded prostitution. That was their religion. It's not a new problem. How many wives does Solomon have? 700. Those weren't enough. He had 300 concubines. And we can talk about wisdom all day long on that one, but the bottom line is it's not a new problem. Where are we? Let's talk about LGBTQ. And we touched on this a little bit last night. And we see it being pushed down our children's throat, down our throats. And it is definitely impacting our homes. American Association of Pediatrics Board of Directors voted to reaffirm the 2018 policy statement on gender-affirming care and authorized development of expanded set of guidance for pediatricians based on systematic review of the evidence. The evidence they are looking at says we have to support these young people, pre-adolescents, that think they are a member of the opposite sex. Let me tell you a little secret. When I was about 9, I wanted to be a dump truck. I'm not a dump truck. If I were a dump truck, I'd be a really small dump truck. Right? We all had that stuff. My wife had a kid come into her clinic, wanted to be a bear. Call me bear. I'm a bear. You're not a bear. I went to medical school. I know what bears look like. I know. Anyway, you get the point. But the American Academy of Pediatrics says we have to endorse and affirm these children. This is a medical problem. If for any reason my wife will lose her medical license, it'll be over this mess. Because she will not call a boy a girl or a girl a boy. The American Psychological Association, and I want you to get a hold of this one. We're going to talk about this one in just a few minutes because it becomes very, very marked, and pardon my, this is being live streamed, isn't it? An oxymoron to what we're going to talk about here in just a minute. The American Psychological Association has adopted a landmark policy affirming evidence-based care for transgender, gender diverse, and non-binary children, adolescents, and adults noting that recent legislative attempts to obstruct access to psychological and medical interventions for such individuals puts them at risk of depression, anxiety, and other negative mental health outcomes. Get a hold of that last half sentence. American Psychological Association. The American Medical Association was one of the first to put out a statement on all of this stuff, and they support the public and private health insurance coverage for treatment of gender dysmorphia and oppose the denial of health insurance based on sexual orientation and sexual identity. You don't think that's coming to a legislature near you soon? It's already there, and it's already passed. That was from 2002. Or 2020. Indiana, the state of Indiana investigated Mary and Jeremy Cox because they would not refer to their son using pronouns in a name inconsistent with his biological sex. I call that good parenting. State courts allowed Indiana to keep the child from their home because their disagreement with their child motivated by their religious beliefs. You don't think this is coming to a court near you soon? Now, let's go back to what the American Psychological Association said, or Psychiatry Association said about their mental issues because they're being rejected. That's their take on it. LGBTQ plus, and I don't know what all those acronyms stand for. Young people are more than 4 times as likely to attempt suicide than their peers. That's without persecution. That's just their mental health state. The Trevor Project estimates that more than 1.8 million young people ages 13 to 24 seriously consider suicide each year in the U.S., and at least one attempts suicide every 45 seconds. Starting to see why it's being pushed so hard? To 2023 U.S. National Survey on the Mental Health of LGBTQ young people found that 41% of young people seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year, including roughly half of transgender and non-binary youth. Data shows that bisexual youth, or those who have the capacity to form attraction and/or relationships to more than one gender, report higher rates of depressed mood, bullying, sexual assault, and physical harm. According to the Trevor Project's analysis of CDC data, almost half of 48% of bi young people seriously consider attempting suicide in the past year, and 27% attempted suicide. Among gay or lesbian youth, 37% seriously considered suicide, and 19% attempted it. And among straight youth, we're looking at 14% considered and 6% attempted. What's the disparity? Something going on more deep than just what my gender is? These statistics remained consistent across all socioeconomic demographics. They don't change. Transgender and non-binary young people face elevated risks of depression, thoughts of suicide, and attempted suicide compared to those who are cisgender and straight, including cisgender members of the community. A peer review study by the Trevor Project, research published in the Journal of Adolescent Health, found that transgender and non-binary youth were 2 to 2.5 times as likely to experience depressive symptoms, seriously consider suicide, and attempt suicide compared to the cisgender LGBTQ partners or peers. And we can talk about this for a long time. And it's not the crux of the lesson. We're looking at impacts to the home and the family. Now, this is a study in and to itself, but you can see from the medical boards, from the legislatures, from the courts, why it's being pushed so hard on us for 7.1% of the population. 92.9% of the population, this is not a thing. But what do you hear every day in the news? Gay rights being trampled on. Are they precious souls? Absolutely. Do we need to reach out to them? Absolutely. Do we need to beat them up for what they are? Absolutely not. They need to be taught the truth in love where they are. Just like any 20-something young man who would grab as many partners as he possibly can. But we don't, because we have the self-control taught in Galatians. So can the same self-control be attributed to those that find themselves here, and they need help. I've got 15 minutes less, so let's get going here. Political affiliation, other things that break up that are affecting the home, especially in a general election year, political affiliations, or work-life balance. Any of you work too many hours? Nah, that never happens, right? Quality time in the home. How much time is society taking away from our homes? Those of you that have children in multiple sports, so I have a friend that has 4 girls, and they're involved in everything. So one of those parents is gone from the time school lets out until just about bedtime, shuttling kids 5 nights a week. Is it worth it? Something we need to think about. We'll talk about that downstairs here in a little bit. Entertainment. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but we have to be very careful. Those of you that have grandchildren and children raising grandchildren really need to talk about this. Here's the thing. My daughter was about 3, I guess, driving down the road, listening to country music. And you all know where I'm going with this. We have music on, but we don't really pay attention to it. I don't sing to the radio. If you've sat around me the other night while we were singing, you know why I don't sing out loud. The very first song my daughter learned off the radio, and I don't remember who the artist was, but from the backseat of my truck, she yelled out, "Hell." You know what dawned on me in that moment? Because of my lack of discretion and paying attention, I had thrown the doors of my home open and said, "Satan, come take my child." Don't think I didn't slam that door closed when I got home. It's a big deal. Discretionary time and money. How do we spend it? How do our children see us spend it? How do our wives see us spend it? Disney World is a wonderful place. Wouldn't take anything away from them other than their political stances. How much more would a family get out of a week at PTP than they'll get out of a week at Disney World? Critical stuff. Best week of our year, every year, except this week. This has been outstanding. Really, you had no idea how bad I needed this. But anyway, discretionary time. Solomon writes, "That which has been is what will be, that which is done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, is this new?" We don't live with new sins. We can talk about the gay agenda, and we can talk about Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah. Same problem, right? We can talk about fornication and pornography. Where did Joshua and Caleb spend the night? Not that they indulged, but where did they spend the night? In a harlot's house. It's nothing new. Political issues are nothing new. People pushing agendas are nothing new. Go back to the sons of Solomon, splitting a kingdom over what? False gods. Nothing new. Can we get to it faster than we could 1,000 years ago? Absolutely. 2 clicks. I don't even know where my phone is. There it is. 2 clicks. Where are you? Wherever you want to be. What are you watching? Whatever you want to watch. So whose responsibility is it to control it? Our core text. Sorry. We have 10 minutes left. That was your introduction. Hey, Wayne set the mold last night. I'm just following what he's established. Children, obey your parents and the Lord, for this is what is right. Honor your father and mother. You fathers, and here we go. Do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and the admonition of the Lord. Who? Fathers. Bring them up. Who? Your children. Training and admonition of the Lord. You know what it doesn't say up there? Mothers. When the doors of my house close, whose responsibility is it? Let's go back off to what Wayne said last night. God, wife, children. Or was that Freddie? I can't remember. Was it Freddie? Okay. Thank you, Freddie. By the way, great lesson. Let's translate that into what it means to us. God, wife, children. Gentlemen, what is your number one job? Get yourself to heaven. What's your number two job? Get your wife to heaven. What's your number three job? Get your children to heaven. Number four, take the world with you. In that order. That's a God-given order. Fathers, train up your children. Fathers absent from the day-to-day interaction in his household are not effective fathers. And what do we mean by that? Mothers, have you ever said, wait till your father gets home? My mom never, ever said that. She liked to get the revenge herself. It wasn't funny. I can't tell you the objects I've been hit with in my lifetime. But I got the last laugh. But anyway, all that aside. Fathers are active participants in the home. It is easy. So when I get home, when I used to work in an office building, when I got home, the first thing I wanted to do is sit down, nobody talk to me. Give me 15 minutes to just veg. Don't bother me. Didn't have children then. That was okay. But once that veg time's over, who do I owe my time to? Myself? My internet games? My going down to the shop and working, loading up the boat and going to the lake? Train them up in the way they should go. Fathers absent from spiritual education of their children. This is a big deal right here. So many times we leave this up to the mother. And I had a very distinct advantage in our family, and I'm not saying that I did it right. What I am saying is that I was there. Our daughter was homeschooled, and we shared an office. Her videos, we sat back to back, and her Abeka videos played behind me, and my computers and my work were over here. And so I was there for every one of her Bible classes. And I would come out of my chair and say, turn that off right now, we're going to talk about this. Because Abeka is Baptist doctrine, whatnot, so there were some things that had to be corrected right away. So it was a very, very fun dynamic, and she got to see how important it was to me that we would stop school and talk about what's going wrong in this conversation or what's going right in this conversation. We got to have that interaction, and I know my situation was a lot different than most people, but we have to take the time as fathers. Again, let's go back to Ephesians. Whose responsibility is it to raise them up in the spirit and admiration of the Lord? It's not mom's time, it's dad's time, right? Fathers absent from their marriage. Or father, I guess that probably should say husbands. absent from their marriage. So here's the deal. When Julie and I first got married, we lived on Galveston Island in Texas, and it really is an island. And we lived literally one block from the Gulf of Mexico. So I would get off work, go home, change clothes, grab my fishing rods, go to the Gulf of Mexico. And this is pretty much a daily thing, 6 days a week. And one day, Julia pulls me aside. Well, she didn't pull me aside. She just looked me dead in the face and said, "This weekend is mine." That should never have to be said to a husband, should it? And we'll talk about that a little bit more downstairs. We're going to talk about a lot downstairs, aren't we? Being present in my marriage, it's a tough thing, right? We work all day. They work all day. We come home. We want to do our thing. We want to relax. We cannot neglect that relationship. That relationship building that we started when we started dating has to continue throughout our marriage life, doesn't it? Father's absent from discipline. We already talked about mom's thoughts on this. One day, I was a little kid. Mom jerked me up out of the church pew. Dad was an usher that day, and she dragged me out of that building and handed me, "Take care of this." Of course, Dad had no clue what I had done. I didn't know what I'd done. So Dad and I went and walked around outside for a while, and he sent me back in. No big deal. Fathers have to be in the middle of it, don't they? We don't play good cop, bad cop parent. Never did with our daughter. We were both bad cops. Because we understood each other. We had the same values. We had the same goals. We had the same desires for our daughter growing up. We were on the same page. Were our methods different? Absolutely. My wife is a gentle soul. And she's not one of these people that says, "Well, now let's sit down and let's talk about this." That's not what I'm saying at all. She has more patience than I do. But we never argued about it. Fathers have got to be part of that. You take care of it. Your problem. No. What about fathers absent from worship? What do our children see? If it's not important to me, it will be optional for them. Right? Amen. Every time the doors are open. Bless you all for being here today. What do your children see? What do our grandchildren see? Here's the thing. Work days. Do our children understand that going to work at the church building for the benefit of the congregation is as important as anything else we're going to do on this day, including a baseball game? Do they understand that? Every time the doors are open. Oh, got work days on there. What do our children see as our number one priority? Father's absent from the dinner table, and I was the world's worst about this. Because there's always something to do, right? That's what we do. We don't sit down and spend time, quality time, as a family, talking about our days, mentoring our children, doing what we know they need to do, but it's inconvenient for me to be there in that moment. Father's absent from snuggle time. What does that mean? Some of my best memories is rocking my daughter to sleep at night. Reading her, well, I didn't read her many stories. She made me make them up. And I have the imagination of, well, I don't have an imagination at all. But we got through it. She didn't care. She was a little kid. To partake in the institution of marriage today is also to condone the historical abuses perpetrated in its name. You know what that's saying? Marriage suppresses and oppresses women. That's what they're saying. And I'm going to fly through a bunch of this stuff real quick. If a man is blameless, the husband of one wife, having faithful children, not accused of dissipation or insubordination. Flip over to, real quick, 1 Timothy chapter 3. Y'all know where I'm going. And I've got about 2 minutes left, so I want to get this real quick. And we have way more material to cover, so I'm going to take Billy's time here next hour. I can do that. Let's see. Let's go to 1 Timothy chapter 3. Sorry. Do not mistake these instructions for just elders. Verse 4. One who rules his own house well, having his children in submission with all reverence. For a man does not know how to rule his own house, how will he take care of the church of God? Gentlemen, we have to, whether you aspire to be an elder or not, whether you're qualified to be an elder or not, we have to rule our households well. It falls on us. And here's the secret to it. And here, not the secret, but the problem. If we fail to lead as men, the women will step up. We see it in the church. We see it across religious world all over today. Women stepping up into pulpits for a number of reasons. And it's all not just feminism. A lot of it's because we're not doing our job. They're leading in the homes. They're leading in the worship. They're leading in the churches because we won't step up and take our place that God has commanded us to be. The number one threat against homes and families today, and this was hit on last night, is men's lack of leadership. When we put our boots back on and we start leading as God has led us, we'll start taking our families back. Appreciate your time.